This afternoon, our interview is with Gene M. Fitter. Gene was born in Altus, Oklahoma, February of 1924. He served in 24. Okay. Yeah. He served in the United States Air Corps before the Air Force was in existence, the Army Air Corps, from January of 1943 until June of 1945. His highest rank attained was captain. This interview was conducted at Crowley, Texas on Friday, May the 10th, 2013. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Gene in any way. Also in the room is Milton Gibson, who is our videographer. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress, and also for Operation Remember in Burleson, Texas. And with that little introduction, Gene, you can tell us about your time in the U.S. military.
All right. I graduated from high school in 1942, Altus, Oklahoma. And the war had broken out during my senior year. My oldest brother, Philip, had gone through the air cadet training back before the war and had his wings and was already a pilot. My brother Francis, just older than I, he had joined the National Guard and was called up to active duty. And he later on went through OCS and joined the paratroopers. And of course I was the third boy, and I graduated from high school in 42, and I took a test to be able to get in the Air Cadet program, as you had to have 2 years of college or take the test. And so I was called up to active duty in January of 43. And I went through basic training and pre-flight. Then I went to Brady, Texas for primary training. And as I graduated from primary flight school flying PT-19 Fairchilds, they changed Brady from a primary school to a basic school. So I stayed at Brady and took my basic training there on BT-13s. And graduating from basic training, I was sent to Frederick, Oklahoma for advanced flight training on what they called a UC-78 Cessna, twin-engine plane. When I graduated from flight school, I went to Salt Lake City and was where they were putting air crews together, and I was put on a B-24 as a co-pilot. Went to Tucson, Arizona, Davis-Monthan Field for a month or two training, and then went over to overseas where I was assigned to the 742nd Squadron, 455th Bomb Group, and the 15th Air Force, stationed at Cerignola, Italy, Cerignolia. I got there, and the first pilots at that time were having to fly 5 missions as a co-pilot before they got to fly their own crew. And my first pilot that I was assigned to was shot down on his first mission as a co-pilot, so they put my crew with a lead pilot, George Crum. And our crew flew with him for about the next 8 or 10 missions. And at that time, the bombardier and navigator couldn't fly with us because they weren't lead bombardiers or navigators. On about the 3rd mission, the plane my bombardier was flying in, was flying on our wing, was shot down, and my original bombardier was killed. Well, after this, well, I was assigned as our crew was taken over by a fellow Okie named George Underwood, who was half Cherokee Indian, and we flew about the next 10 or 15 missions with him. I was flying as a co-pilot. After probably about my 22nd mission, I was put out as a first pilot and given my own crew, and flew with them a while, and then they made me kind of a checkout pilot for the new crews coming over, and I would take the new crews, and the first pilot would fly as my co-pilot, and I would fly with that crew, and when I come back, I had to give the operation officer a report on how they were and all that. That's the way I finished up my mission. Just before I became a first pilot, we had been up in, I don't remember now what the target was, it's up in Czechoslovakia somewhere. We had had some damage, and I didn't think we'd be able to get across the Adriatic Sea. And I wanted to bail out, but I was the only one of the crew that wanted to do that. So we started out, and we made it as far as the coast of Italy. And we barely landed the B-24 on the beach because we was out of fuel. We didn't know at the time whether we were behind the German lines or the American lines, but it turned out we were behind the American lines. So that was probably about the worst deal I was ever in there. Then after I finished my tour of duty there, 35 missions, I was sent home and got some time off to go home. And then I went back out to California redistribution station, and they wanted to send me to instructor school or to C-54 cargo planes, and I didn't want either one of them. I was fooling around, and well, they came out, and if you had enough points, which they gave you for various things like missions flown and all that, you could go on in active duty. And that's what I did. I took in active duty, and the fall of '45, I started school up at Oklahoma State. But growing up, is that okay?
Yeah.
Growing up, as I say, I graduated from high school in '42. Well, I went through the Depression years primarily in the cotton patch. My father was a rural mail carrier, but we had a couple of farms, and he'd take us boys down to the farm to work all day, and then he'd come down that night and pick us up. So it was one thing about it, we always, growing up the way I did, we always had plenty to eat and a place to sleep, so we were pretty fortunate. My dad had a job, and so as a whole, we were more fortunate than most of them. But I did grow up doing a lot of farm work. My brothers all came through the war. They were, none of them seriously injured or anything, so we were very fortunate. There were 4 of us boys old enough for World War II. My youngest brother, who was too young, later on, when after going through ROTC at Oklahoma State, he became an officer too. So all five boys were officers, commissioned officers. I had 3 sisters. My oldest sister died several years ago, and then the younger sister's dead, and I only have 1 sister left, but I still have all 4 of my brothers left. Anything else?
No, sir. That must have been a trying thing for your mother to have 4 boys off during the war.
Yeah, it was. I can still remember when I came back, a girl told me one time that she used to go out to see my younger sisters, and she always saw those 4 stars in the window. Said, quite impressive to her.
Mm-hmm.
But we were lucky. We came through.
Well, little luck and a little hard work go a long way.
Yeah.
Your dad was a rural mail carrier
Yes.
in the Oklahoma Panhandle.
No, we were actually in the southwestern part of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Altus
Before
is
you, yeah.
just across the
Yeah.
river from Vernon, Texas.
Okay. He delivered mail in a car or by horseback?
Well, he started out with a horse and buggy. He had a mail, what they call a mail hack. Then later on, he got a Model T Ford, you know, and then graduated. But he went to Oklahoma, that part of Oklahoma, in 1890.
Wow.
And he was 6 years old at the time, and that was Greer County, Texas. And my grandfather filed on 320 acres there and had 320 acres of land. And in 1896, the Supreme Court ruled that the South Fork of the Red River was the main branch rather than the North Fork, so that all that area became Greer County, Oklahoma, which later on was divided into 3 counties. But my dad used to say he had lived in 2 states and 3 counties and never moved. He lived in Greer County, Texas, Greer County, Oklahoma, and then Jackson County, Oklahoma, which Altus is in.
Just the fact that he was a mailman with a hack, H-A-C-K.
Yeah, just what they call a mail hack, which was a buggy. It had a
Enclosed.
cab on it. We enclosed so it, you know, keep from weather getting to the
Rain or shine.
rain or shine.
I'll be darned.
6 days a week. I've seen him get up 4 o'clock in the morning when it'd be bad weather and go down and start on his route and not get home till that night because those roads were could get almost impossible.
Did a lot of the mail come to Altus and leave Altus by rail? Did it come on a train?
Primarily by rail, yes.
Primarily,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
From Oklahoma City or Dallas or Amarillo, I guess?
Yeah, we had 3 different railroads in there at the time, and so it would come from various parts. So.
Okay. Graduated from high school in Altus and went to Brady, Texas.
I first went to Wichita Falls, Texas for basic training.
Okay.
Down at Shepherd Air Base.
Right.
Then for 2 months, they sent 200 of us cadets to Southwest Texas College at San Marcos. Was going to give us some college there. Well, they came in about a month or 2 and took me and 49 other cadets to San Antonio for pre-flight. And
to what's Randolph today, I guess.
Well, no, it was what they called Cadet Center back then. It was SAAC. That was the first SAC. It wasn't Strategic Air Force. It was San Antonio Aviation Cadet Center.
Okay.
And from there, I went to Brady for primary flight training. And then they classified you there at San Antonio for pilot, bombardier, or navigator. And
You have certainly been to a lot of places that were military bases then, but just don't even exist today. Brady, I guess the municipal airport down there is where.
not much at Brady anymore.
Yeah.
I was down there a short time back, and they had a few little operations around there, but they still had an office out there where you could go in and they still had some memorabilia there from the old air base. So that was a private school. You know, they had an Army school and they had a private school, but that was a private. It was operated by civilians when I went through.
Okay.
Now, we had Army supervision. There was Army officers there, and your check writers were Army Air Force people.
I guess there were a lot of private subcontractors that did flight training?
Yes, there was quite a few.
Okay.
I was in the Central Air Command. My oldest brother, Philip, who was director of flight training at Pecos Air Base, he was in the West Coast. That was Pecos, Texas was West Coast Training Command, but Brady was in the Central Training Command.
You went to various schools, and you end up in a B-24.
Right.
Go to Italy.
Yes.
You talked about, I think, 5 missions. You were a co-pilot, and then you got.
No, I flew about the first 8 missions with a lead pilot. We only flew when we led the squadron.
Okay.
And as a co-pilot, then I flew some more missions as a co-pilot. I got to be first pilot about a little more than halfway through. I became first pilot.
When you flew missions, and generally you went north into Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, wherever.
Most of our missions, well, the first 2 missions I flew were Palesti airfields in Romania.
Okay.
And most of the missions I flew were either in Austria, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and up in that area of Europe. I did go into Munich a couple of times, but that's about, we didn't actually go into Germany proper too often from down there.
Would a 24 fly that far and come back?
Yeah, we could go, depending on how heavily they loaded you with bombs. They usually loaded us quite a bit heavier with bombs than the B-17s. Therefore, we had a little better range than the 17s did, and but they didn't have as big a bomb loads, so they could go in higher, which I wish we could have.
A little safer.
Yeah. But anyway, we only had 1 wing of B-17s in Italy. We had 3 wings of B-24s. And so we were primarily B-24s, whereas the 8th Air Force over in England was primarily B-17s.
Okay. When you say you flew a mission, how much airtime do you think you had in each one of those missions? Certainly depended on where you were going, Gene.
I would say our average mission from the time we took off till we got back ranged somewhere between 7 and 8 hours.
Okay.
And, they'd put K rations on the plane for us to eat, and the longest mission I ever flew probably up Blackhammer, up in, not sure just where Blackhammer is, probably up part of Czechoslovakia. It was over 8 hours, but that was the longest mission I ever flew.
You fly in a fleece-lined suit?
Fly what?
In a fleece-lined suit?
I
I imagine it got pretty cold.
We had suits that were fleece-lined, flight suits, which we wore, but under that we had a heated suit, which was good. But if in case those heated suits went out, we still had the other, so we could stay warm. But I never did have one of those heated suits go out on me, but occasionally they did.
Okay.
And we had the old type oxygen stuff. We had to go on oxygen at 10,000 feet, and that was orders, because they had some that didn't go on that quick, and they passed out. So.
You normally didn't. What sort of altitudes did you normally fly at?
Do what now?
Altitude. What did you normally fly at?
Well, we went in probably about as high as we could go. In the wintertime, the highest I ever went in, when the air was cold, we could go higher. I went over, I think the highest I ever went over a target was 27,000 feet. But in the summertime, it was usually anywhere from 18 to 22 or 30,000. And we had to get up fairly high to clear the Alps before we went in, so I only flew about the last mission or two I flew. They said we was going to go in a low level. Well, that low level was about 17,000 feet. So,
how accurate were the bomb runs from those kind of altitudes? I guess you had a Norden bomb sight?
at Norden bomb sites, and what they would do, the lead plane bombardier would aim short of the target. And then he would, when he said bombs away, the other bombardiers started toggling the bombs out. And what they did, they tried to walk those bombs right across the target.
Okay.
And sometimes it worked real good, and sometimes it didn't work very good. Just like they sent us up one time, to bomb the Ferrara Railroad Bridge, which was across the Po River, coming out of the Brenner Pass down into Italy. And at the briefing, I'll never forget, the colonel got up there and he said, well, they sent the dive bombers after it and they didn't get it. They sent the medium bombers after it and they didn't get it. Said, now we're going to show them what the B-24s can do. We didn't get it either. That's some of the most accurate flak I've ever seen there at that bridge. And I don't know that they ever got that bridge knocked out. I know we missed it so far they wouldn't even give credit for a bombing mission on it.
In flying these missions, you did 35 missions.
Yes.
Normally you fly a mission every other day, every third day?
It depended on a lot on the weather, and also depended, just like when I first got there, my flying was with a lead pilot, and we only flew when we led the squadron, which was, if we flew once a week, we were lucky. But then after that, why, we flew more often. Depended on how many crews they had there at the time and how many planes they had available for flying. Sometimes we could only put 6 or 7 airplanes in the sky.
Were B-24s pretty reliable generally?
Pretty what?
Reliable?
I liked the B-24. A lot of people that flew it didn't like it, but I thought it was a pretty good airplane myself. And
You ever lose an engine, Gene?
oh yes, yeah, we had the engine.
You ever lose
shot.
two?
We had, no, I never lost two engines. Well, I'll take that back. No, it was just one then. We lost one. That's all but I had a prop windmill on me, which was a lot of drag. I got the prop feathered, and then it came unfeathered and windmilled on us. And that was the day we hit the beach. We was just had too much drag. Couldn't hold our altitude and was burning up a lot of extra gas. So that's why we had to hit the beach.
These 35 flights, do you have anti-aircraft fire on almost all of them?
I don't ever remember being on a mission that didn't catch anti-aircraft fire. Some of it was more intense than others. Now, Pulaski oil fields were very intense anti-aircraft fire. And there was some other targets, like that one bridge. They finally said they had 80 anti-aircraft guns down there guarding that one bridge. So it was pretty intense flak over just that one little area. Of course, at Pulaski, I don't know how many guns they had up there. It was just, the sky was just full of smoke.
You lose some of the other airplanes on these flights too?
Yeah, we did. Our first flight over Pulaski, I forget how many planes were shot down. We happened to be in an area where we didn't catch that much flak, but we caught some. But my second trip over Pulaski, we caught a lot. We had, the ground crew said they patched over 200 holes in our plane.
Wow.
And they knocked out our hydraulic system. And we still had, when we landed, we still had what they call accumulator. We still had that. We had one application of brakes. If we'd ever got off of it, we wouldn't have any. So our engineer, I had a good engineer. He was from Montana. He came up and told us, he said, you guys get on those brakes, don't get off, because you won't have any more brakes. So when we started braking, we didn't ever let it completely off the brakes. So it worked out fine.
But your flaps, your rudder, all of that was hydraulically controlled, wasn't it?
Yes. Am I right or not? I'm not sure whether the flaps, and I don't think they were.
That was all manual?
Well, they had,
Some kind of,
you know, they didn't give us much. They were needing people to fly them. They didn't need us. So
what the rudders were all pedal operated, right?
yeah, brakes and the rudders and the brakes were
Brakes.
the top of the. You had at
The pedal.
top of the
Top and bottom.
yeah.
You have to lean on them pretty hard?
No, they were the brakes were hydraulic and no, you didn't have to. They worked pretty good. And of course, well, I guess the controls where it did have. Yeah, they had. That's right. They had help from the hydraulic.
Talked about anti-aircraft. What about the Messerschmitts or whatever the Luftwaffe was?
The Luftwaffe. By the time I got there, of course, I didn't get overseas till July of '44, and the Luftwaffe was getting pretty well decimated. So they would pick their targets. They would be up there, and if they found a formation that wasn't in very good formation, they jumped on it. And they were pretty much controlled from the ground. Now, just about a week before I got there, they wouldn't let a squadron take off unless they had 6 planes, flyable planes. Well, we had 7 flyable that day, and one of the squadrons across the field only had 5, so we loaned them a plane. And that particular day over Vienna, the Luftwaffe hit the 742nd Squadron. They shot down all 6 of the planes there.
Wow.
The only plane that came back to our squadron that went up that day was the loaner, and that was about it. But I never really got hit hard by Luftwaffe. I saw planes 2 get shot down by them, but fortunately, I happened to be where they didn't.
How many crew members do you have in a B-24?
10.
10?
But after I started flying, got the first pilot, a lot of times I had 11 because we had a German interpreter that flew on those missions, and he'd interpret the conversation between the Luftwaffe and the ground, and they were pretty much controlled by the ground people.
I'd never heard before that y'all had an interpreter on
Yeah,
board.
he was, and he flew with me, and he told me one time I landed a little hard. He said, "Lieutenant, not a landing like that, I'm going to find me somebody else to ride with." I said, "I don't blame you."
Were these interpreters U.S. citizens?
Yeah, he was, but he could speak German, and he
Grew up in Milwaukee or somewhere?
probably, I don't know where he was from, but yeah. And then we had, they got to having a swap between the American, what was it, the 5th Army up there and the Air Force, and they'd send somebody down there to fly with us, and we'd send somebody up Army to be up on the front lines with them, kind of a swap out deal to see how the others lived. And we had one of those guys ride with me one day, and when he came back, he said, "Well," he said, "Lieutenant," he said, "you know, really you guys have the best of it, but I don't want to swap with you." I said, "Well, I don't want to swap with you."
In your 10-man crew, you had a bottom ball turret and a top ball turret?
Had bottom and top turrets, and then tail and nose turrets. We had 4 turrets.
Okay.
They had 20-50 caliber machine guns in the turrets. Then when you came under attack, with a radio operator and the engineer would go back to the waist, and we had, each side we had single mounted 50 caliber machine guns, and they operated those.
Wow.
So we had 10 50 caliber machine guns.
Lots of firepower.
A lot of firepower. And the reason they wanted you to fly a good formation, the Germans didn't like to come in on a good formation because there was too much bullets being spewed out there. So they liked to, if they could, pick a loose formation, and then even then try to split them apart some.
The one you put down on the beach, The guy in the bottom ball. I guess
Well,
he
it
climbs.
was up. We had the ball turret gunner pulled up, so you could raise and lower that ball turret on the bottom.
Was that the same with the top turret? Could
No,
you?
no, the
Okay.
top turret was stationary.
But that would get rid of a lot of drag, I guess. Did you just put that bottom ball turret down when you got?
No, it was too low. It was too low to the ground.
Okay.
So he'd get in the bottom turret after we took off and before we got up over enemy territory, and then they'd lower it. But no, we had the turrets up and we had all the crew back there in crash positions, and we hit the beach. It looked fairly smooth coming in, but it had dunes on it 4 or 5 feet high. And first thing when we first hit, we lost our Bombay doors. They both stayed right there, and then that thing kind of nosed over and it was going along and crushed in the turret in front, and it just filled that plane with sand clear up under the flight deck there under us. I didn't think it ever stopped screeching and scrunching. Finally, it just kind of winged over on the left and stopped. We all came out of it, so.
You still remember that pretty well.
Oh, I still remember it, yeah. I was scared.
Yeah. You got married somewhere along the line after you got out of the service?
I didn't get married till after I got out and was in college. And I just finished my college when I got married.
Okay.
And, I got out in time to start school. I was on inactive duty and started school at Oklahoma State, and I played on the only undefeated for the whole year football team they ever had. That was in the fall of 1945.
Oklahoma State, the Cowboys.
Yeah, it was Oklahoma A&M back in those days. We played in the Sugar Bowl and beat St. Mary's out of California.
Do you have a ring or something from the Sugar Bowl?
Do what?
A ring or something from the Sugar
I got
Bowl?
a watch.
A watch?
It's in my safety deposit box now.
All right. All right.
And, yeah, it was.
Did you ever take anything that you had in the military and use it when I guess you went to school on GI Bill?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And,
Other than that, did you ever take any of that experience, that flying experience, and use it as a civilian?
oh, no, I didn't. Now, my oldest brother, he went back into the regular Air Force, and so, but I don't know that I ever took anything I did in the service. Of course, anything you get you've done, it's an experience. You probably helps you some way, whether you know it.
You get some leadership
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, but you didn't use anything where you could use your flying skills.
No, I didn't. I started at one time. I started to. Me and my brother, that was a paratrooper, started to put in a crop dusting business. We even already had 2 planes reserved that we were buying, and it was worrying my mother and dad quite a bit because I had a friend or two that started doing that after they got out and got killed. So we bought some combines and started making the wheat harvest when we weren't in school.
Those 2 planes you had reserved, you have old Stearmans or something, or?
They were. Actually, we didn't know enough about it. We went down to they had some observation planes that they still had never been uncrated still, and we had already had 2 of those reserves we were going to buy, and then we just didn't buy them. But they would not have made a very good crop dusting plane. The Stearmans did, yeah. A lot of them.
A lot of lift.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate your time. You got quite a story there.
I kind of might be a little unjointed there because
no, sir. Did fine.
I would happen to think of something maybe out of that I have to go back.
Just fine.
Pick
We
up.
We appreciate your time today and your time in the service.
Well, thank
Great
you.
story.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good to meet you.